If I had a sermon bumper video, this is when I'd pray it. So, and we'd pass the offering bucket. So we have a bucket. Otherwise, you can give online. You know all that. This is my dramatic pause. Good. I'm going to continue the series of Daniel, the book of Daniel. I started a few weeks ago with Daniel chapter 1. We skipped Daniel chapter 2. We did Daniel chapter 3 last week. I encouraged you all, read through the book of Daniel. It's a powerful, powerful book. We'll continue on this series until November 16th. That's what I realized. November 16th. Then on November 23rd, which is the Sunday before Thanksgiving, I have a guest speaker. His name is Dan. So it'll be great. This week, we'll be on Daniel chapter 4. Next week, 2 weeks, Elizabeth will be preaching on Daniel chapter 6. So I'll be in Daniel chapter 5 next week. Then the last 2 weeks, we'll look at kind of that last half of Daniel. We actually might just focus on Daniel 10, 11, and 12, those last 2 weeks. So I got 2 weeks to go through that, which is good. I was looking at that yesterday and just diving into that. It's called Stand, though. Daniel, one of the key themes of this book, and I'll mention this again here in a minute, but is that the kingdom of God is eternal. All other kingdoms are temporal. They're temporary. Daniel 2, which I didn't preach on, actually talks about there's a dream that the Lord gave to Nebuchadnezzar, and it was about the kingdoms that were going to follow him. And Daniel interprets it, and ultimately the kingdom that it finishes with is Christ, the kingdom of the Messiah. It's that kingdom. That kingdom is the most powerful of them all. But that's one of the main themes of it. So I've been calling it Stand because we have that theme, but we also have the theme of just standing in your faith, for your faith. We've been using different stand things after that as well. So today's going to be called Stand Down. I know the notes will be passed out here for all of us to have. As those are being passed out, there were twin 7-year-old boys who always seemed to be getting into trouble. Their parents knew that if there is any mischief in town, it was likely having to do with them. And they were probably involved. So finally one day the mother heard that a preacher was in town who had been successful at disciplining children. Very successful at it. So she calls the preacher over and says, I need you to speak to my boys. And he agreed to do it, but he wanted to speak to them individually. So the mother sent one of the twins in the morning, and the other boy was going to go see him in the afternoon. And the preacher was a big man with a booming, deep voice, so a lot like mine. No. He sat the boy down and asked him sternly, do you know where God is, son? The boy made no response, and his eyes started to get wider and wider, and his mouth started to hang open, and he asked him again, do you know where God is? And the boy made no attempt to answer. And the preacher raised his voice even louder, shook his finger at the boy, and said, where is God? The boy screamed and ran out of the room directly to his room and hid in the closet. And then his twin brother came to him a few minutes later and is like, what happened in there? He says, we're in big trouble this time. God is missing and they think we did it. So that one's just a fun one. So we're going to continue the book of Daniel, the series called Stand. I mentioned Chapter 1, it's where we get introduced to Daniel and his 3 friends, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, who we all know as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which were their changed names from the Babylonians. Chapter 1 was that. Chapter 2 was a dream. We didn't go on it. I encourage you to read it. Chapter 3, which we talked about last week, was where those 3 young men, not Daniel, but Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they faced the fiery furnace. They did not bow down, they stood up. And we get one of the most powerful statements of faith in Daniel chapter 3, where the king he's telling them, I'm going to give you one more chance to bow down when the music plays. And they respond to him like, we're not doing that. And then they give one of the most powerful faith statements. They said, but even if, they first say, the Lord will save us. And they say, but even if he doesn't, even if God doesn't, we're not bowing down. Throw us into the furnace. We're not going to bow down to this statue that you've made, King Nebuchadnezzar. And it's a powerful statement there, and we get to see that. So if you missed it, just go back last week. But even if he doesn't, We're going to make it clear to you. We'll never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you've set up. So we're through that, and now we're in Daniel chapter 4. We get a kind of a transition here. We get a transition here in Daniel chapter 4. I'm entitling it the message today called Stand Down, which is really it's a military term, right, Jason? It's a military term where it's like, all right, you don't need to be at ready. You can stand down and be at ease a little bit more. And really the heart behind today's message on Stand Down is that King Nebuchadnezzar, like many kings back then and even people in power today, often think of themselves as a god. Especially back then, the kings were equated with God figures, and they wanted to be worshipped, and they'd force people to do it, which we saw in Daniel chapter 3. They would force people to do it. And we'll see in Daniel chapter 6 as well. But we get a story in Daniel chapter 4. We get what it actually seems to be written by Nebuchadnezzar or told from Nebuchadnezzar, as you'll see if we read through it. I'm not going to read through the whole chapter. It's a little bit too long. But you see Nebuchadnezzar is talking in first person in this passage. We get a story of, it seems like how he ended up standing down before the Lord. He had already seen God do a lot of miracles. I mean, we just mentioned chapter 3. He had already seen God do miracles, but there's something different that happens in chapter 4 inside of his heart. So we're going to dive into chapter 4 today. We're going to dive into this chapter. We're going to learn some points on it. Everybody has their notes. There's going to be 3 different points that I have that are tied in with it. But Daniel chapter 4 is where we'll be at today. Amen? So Daniel chapter 4 is his letter essentially from Nebuchadnezzar. It's recounting how he really comes to praise the Lord for who the Lord is. We see in verse 1, I'm going to read verse 1, 2, and 3 here real quick. It says, King Nebuchadnezzar sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. So he's sending something to everybody under his kingdom. Then verse 2 and 3, he starts talking. I want you all to know about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. For me. He just saw in Daniel chapter 3 where he saw this miraculous wonder of the 4 in the furnace when he had thrown in 3. He saw that miraculous sign and wonder, but now he's talking about how he wants to share the miraculous sign and wonder God had performed for him. How great are his signs, how powerful his wonders. His kingdom will last forever. Remember I mentioned that's one of the key themes of the book of Daniel. His kingdom, God's kingdom, will last forever. We live in a great nation, by the way, the U.S., and considering we're almost 250 years old, it's an amazing thing. We live in a great nation. And I hate saying this, but sadly someday it's going to be gone. But you know what won't be gone? God's kingdom. It'll last forever. His rule through all generations. His rule through all generations. That's Daniel chapter 4, verse 2 and 3. And I joke, we go from Daniel sharing these stories to, it's as if, now we get Nebuchadnezzar. He's sharing this story in first person plural. In young people language, Asher and Sam, I said, it's like Daniel was typing and then he was AFK. So if you know what that means, you understand. His tablet was unlocked. See how I used the old school and the new school? That was creative. I like that line. His tablet was unlocked. And Nebuchadnezzar goes to town and he shares this whole story. He sends it out. He sends this out to everybody. But we see a dramatic shift. So what happened? What happened in chapter 3 where he just built this 90-foot gold statue of himself that he's telling everybody to worship, to now he's saying these things. I want you all to know about the miraculous signs and wonders the Most High God has performed for me. I'm glad you're asking that question because that's what chapter 4 is really about. So chapter 4, we go on after that declaration. Then we get the story that Nebuchadnezzar goes into. In chapter 4, verse 4, he says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living in my palace in comfort and prosperity. We could pause there. If that was the goal in life, Nebuchadnezzar was doing it to the max. He was doing it so well, better than anybody else. He's doing it phenomenally. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living in my palace in comfort and prosperity. Here's the thing. He was living in his comfort and prosperity, but Nebuchadnezzar was also a very proud man. I just mentioned it. Just a chapter ago, he had built that 90-foot tall gold statue to show how great he is, have people be aware of it. He was a prideful man. And, I'm not talking about the good pride where we work hard at something and we need to be proud of the efforts we put in. David right there, David is a hard worker. David should be, and I know you are, you're proud of the work you put in. But I know you also know the Lord. There's a limit to that. I'm proud of what I do. As parents, we're proud of our kids. Man, I'm so proud of you for working hard and performing so well. Whether we went to a friend's dance thing last night. She did great. I'm not her parent, but she did great. I know she put in 12 weeks of work. I know your kids, you're proud of them when they perform well. There's a good pride. Then there's a bad pride. Nebuchadnezzar was living in this bad pride where there's this idea of I did it. Not only did I work hard, but I did it. It was me. I did it. I deserve all the credit. Really what it's doing is it's removing God from the equation. It's pulling him out. You're removing God's sovereignty from the equation. That's what Nebuchadnezzar, that's how he lived. This is a pride that gets inside of us where we begin to become so smart we don't realize how stupid we are anymore. Or we begin to become too righteous that we don't acknowledge how sinful we actually are from time to time. Or we become too big. That ego becomes too big. We can't even fit through a door. We got to take out that middle stanchion like we do when we wheel things in and out every morning. We got to wheel it out. Check your ego at the door. Bad pride. It wants to disguise itself as good pride. Today's sermon is really going to be talking about this pride and how we need to stand down to it. And how we see the story of Nebuchadnezzar doing just that. So here he is. He's living in comfort in his palace in prosperity. By the way, we could say that about this area, North Dallas. Man, sometimes I read that and I think, if people in this area, if they said, I'm living in comfort in North Dallas, that we could directly connect that really quick. I want to let you know something as just a side note, because I'm just going to speak honestly and truthfully. This is an amazing area, but not everyone here has made it. Just because you're here doesn't mean you've made it. I know a lot of people who they want to be here, they work hard to be here, and it's a great area. They should be proud to be glad that they're here, but they're hanging on the edge. And they end up putting so much pressure on themselves to try to be in this comfort and prosperity, or at least put the appearance of it, that it just breaks them. The weight of it breaks them. It's a true thing. It's an interesting thing and a sad thing. One of the biggest issues that you don't hear about this, but one of the biggest pressures that a lot of men face in this area is there's a lot of thoughts of suicide because of that pressure. There's a lot of it. So I was trying to look up and see if the stats actually match that. But I know, I've heard that. I've heard that from people. I've heard it from other pastors. There's such an intense pressure to live in comfort and prosperity that if you can't keep it up, there's this pressure of I'm done. Anyway, so Nebuchadnezzar's living in comfort and prosperity. I had an image I was going to show you. We're doing a magazine article. Asher, you could put up the first picture where you could see the inside of. We took some pictures. There's going to be some pictures of you all in it. But there's a family picture of us. Go to the next picture that's unedited, because this cracks me up. I want to let you know that we're not a perfect family, and I'm gonna own all this. This was the decision made to take these pictures was done on like a Thursday or Friday, and there is not much time for us to think about it. So little time, in fact, that look at Amos, my amazing, handsome, soon-to-be 11-year-old. He's just rocking Crocs, socks, and shorts. I'm telling you, we're about to, we have this magazine thing that makes me laugh, because it's like, that's not the look we're supposed to put out here. But I'm telling you, this is more real than you realize. This is a glimpse of our family. Elizabeth looks amazing. But Amos is like on tippy toes trying to look taller in his Crocs and socks. I'm like, do you not have pants to wear and shoes? I want you to I say this just letting you know, as a pastor, I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm not here to live in comfort and prosperity and just lounge. We're real. I laugh at this. This makes me laugh. That's about as real of a family picture. Or what the other funny thing to do is when you have family pictures and you are recording the people trying to get the kids to smile. That's funny too. And you're working so hard to get one good picture. So, by the way, not everybody has made it is one idea. This pride of I've made it. Not everybody in this area has made it. The other thing is God's not as concerned about our comfort as he is our commitment to him. So he's more concerned about that. So I want to let you know there's nothing wrong with being in this area. But if it's driving you from being close to him, your commitment to him, get out of the area, or at least get close to him. Let's do that. Let's go that way, right? So here's Nebuchadnezzar living in comfort and prosperity. This bad pride that's trying to disguise itself as good pride. Living in comfort and prosperity. Then he has this dream. I'm going to talk through it, so you'll have to read the whole chapter. And it's interesting as you read through a lot of the Old Testament, you'll read through it, and then it's like the same story repeats itself, and it does it like almost 3 times because they're telling it. So they're telling, Nebuchadnezzar tells this dream to Daniel. Daniel then tells Nebuchadnezzar everything about the dream that he just said and what it means. And then after that, we get to see that it happens. So Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and it says it frightened him. He's had a few different dreams. We've mentioned this before. He's had a few different dreams. This is the last one in Daniel that we'll read about or that we get to see. It terrified him as he was in his bed. And the dream's about this big, giant tree that has branches that spread out. Huge tree. These branches spread out, providing shade. Animals are enjoying the shade. There's fruit in the tree. It's everything. Everything about this tree just is kind of a sign of prosperity and doing great. And then the dream says a messenger came. A messenger came, and I will read this part, verses 10 through 18. I'm going to go through it. Here we go. It says, I'm actually going to jump to verse 13 or 14. It says, the messenger came. It says, cut down the branches, Asher, so when we get to that one. Cut down the top and lop off its branches. So he has this dream of a giant tree, huge tree, fruit, animals under it, green leaves, loaded with fruit. It's just lush and amazing. Then a messenger comes, says, cut down the tree and lop off its branches, shake off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Shake off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Chase the wild animals from its shade and the birds from its branches. Verse 15. But leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze and surrounded by tender grass. Now let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the wild animals among the plants of the field. For 7 periods of time, let him have the mind of a wild animal instead of the mind of a human. For this has been decreed by the messengers. It is commanded by the holy ones, so that everyone may know that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world. He gives them to anyone he chooses, even to the lowliest of people. That's what the messenger says. That's the dream. A short dream with that part from the messenger, that what the messenger says. And so Nebuchadnezzar goes to his magicians, his enchanters, his different wise men, and they can't interpret it. This is a constant thing that we see throughout Daniel. Then he goes to Daniel. And Daniel, who has been given tremendous wisdom and insight from the Lord, is the one who ends up interpreting it. And Daniel, he's frightened after he hears the dream initially. He pauses. He said he's overcome with it. He's overcome with it. And he tells the king, because the king says, I don't care what it means. You tell me, Daniel. I need to know what this means. I don't care what the implications are. And the king, and so Daniel starts to interpret it, and he says, King, I wish these events foreshadowed by this dream would happen to your enemies and not to you. But then he tells him, the tree is you. And he goes in and tells him all the different things about what this dream means. The tree is you. Tree is you. It's going to be cut down, and you're going to be out living in the fields. You'll be driven from human society, verse 25 says. You'll live in the fields with wild animals. You'll eat grass like a cow. You'll be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn. That's a good phrase in verse 25. Until you learn that the Most High rules over all the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. Again, so here's Nebuchadnezzar in his pride, and he has this dream that's basically saying you're going to be pulled out of leadership. You're not going to be the king anymore. You're going to be sent out of Babylon and living like a wild animal for 7 periods of time until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. Then, verse 27, Daniel gives this advice. He tells him, King Nebuchadnezzar, please accept my advice. Stop sinning and do what's right. Break from your wicked past and be merciful to the poor. Perhaps then you will continue to prosper. Let me give the points, and I'll bring this back in. One is stand down when God warns us about our pride. Stand down when God warns us about our pride. Here's Nebuchadnezzar, who we've talked about a lot. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, that had essentially conquered much of the known world. Proud man, for sure, in every single way. He's had these dreams before, different dreams before. He's had Daniel interpret them before. Yet his pride it's still been in his way from seeing how amazing God is, even when he had seen God do the miraculous. Nebuchadnezzar was given a chance with another dream right here, where God warns him about his pride and is warning him that until you learn that the Most High rules over all the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he pleases, this dream is going to be your reality soon, King Nebuchadnezzar. He has an until you learn moment with his pride. He gets confronted by it through this dream, with Daniel being the one who interprets it. King, until you learn that the Most High is the ruler over all, this is what's going to happen to you. He's warned about it. Stand down, King. Stand down. Stop sinning. Daniel encourages them, and do what's right. Break from that past, that pride, that arrogance. Break from it and be merciful. He's given a warning to stand down. I think a lot of times we're given until we learn situations in our life. Until we learn that the Most High rules over our finances. By learning how to trust him with it. Until we learn that, we might face a season of more challenges, more hardship. Until we learn that the Most High rules over our relationships and we submit to him beyond any other relationship we have, we can face these different challenges. We have these until we learn situations. The Lord wants us to learn. He gives us the warning, but he also gives us these opportunities where we can then turn to him with repentance. I think we can all face them, and I think when we get confronted with it, let's allow the Lord to teach us so we can turn to him and let him move how he plans. So what about you? Maybe there's an area in your life that God is speaking to you about. Is there an until you learn in your life? Nebuchadnezzar had opportunities. Even with this dream, he had opportunities as to whether or not he was going to change. Stop sinning, do what is right until you learn. But here's what we get. We get point 2. We still get this chance, stand down when God judges our pride. In verse 28, after Daniel gives him this warning, it seems like that's kind of the end of this part. And then it says all these things did happen to the king. In verse 28, But verse 29 tells us 12 months later, he was taking a walk on his royal palace in Babylon. 1 year later, so maybe initially Nebuchadnezzar hears this dream, he has this dream, here's the interpretation from Daniel, and he's doing what he can to change, what he can, but not really submitting to the Lord to let the Lord do what he wants to do. So 12 months go by. Maybe Nebuchadnezzar, maybe he's doing it well for a season. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe the Lord's just giving him some more time until he learns. We don't know. But 12 months go by. He's had the warnings. He's had the opportunities. 12 months go by. He's standing on the roof of his royal palace overlooking Babylon. And in verse 30, it says, he looked out and he says, look at this great city of Babylon. Then I want you to see all the personal pronouns he has. Here's his pride. It's back with a vengeance. By my own mighty power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor. 12 months go by. He's looking out, still probably prosperous and content. And then we get to see what his heart really feels. Look at this great city. It's amazing. And it says, while these words are still in his mouth, now we hear this messenger. The voice from heaven calls out, and everything that messenger said in the dream, he's now saying to Nebuchadnezzar. And within an hour, Nebuchadnezzar is out of his kingship. He's gone. He's out in the fields. Discarded. Sent out there. Stand down, even when God judges our pride. Nebuchadnezzar's life is now about to look like what Proverbs says in 16:18. Pride goes before destruction, haughtiness before a fall. Or pride ends in humiliation is what Proverbs 29:23 says. Humility brings honor. Nebuchadnezzar went from being a great king to now out eating grass in the field like a cow. What a change. The problem is pride does not coexist with our relationship with God. That bad pride can't coexist with it. We can't approach God with pride. It has to be with humility. And Nebuchadnezzar is being taught this, probably in the hardest way for him. Probably the only way that it's going to get through to him as well. He's getting his until he learns situation. And we're all going to have our until we learn situation. Psalm 138 verse 6 says this, though the Lord is great, he cares for the humble, but he keeps his distance from the proud. Again, because that bad pride basically is saying, I don't need God. That's part of the bad pride. I don't need God. I did this on my own. I'm a self-made man. That's what that bad pride does. Nebuchadnezzar was cast off like a wild animal. He's cast off at this point, sent out, no longer king. For 7 periods of time. For 7 periods of time. He's out there, it says the same hour the judgment was fulfilled, Nebuchadnezzar was driven from human society. He ate grass like a cow. He was drenched with the dew of heaven. He lived this way until his hair was as long as eagle's feathers and his nails were like bird's claws. He lost his mind. Is really what it comes down. It's like he went almost insane. And pride will do that to you. We don't realize this, but pride will drive us crazy. It will drive us mad. Because at some point we're going to hit this situation where we can't do it. And unless we're willing to humble ourselves, that pride's going to drive us mad. Why can't I do it? Why can't I do it? Why can't I do it? It's going to drive us mad. He needed to stand down. He was given those opportunities. Now he's being judged. He has the judgment. And the last point 3 is stand down and let God give his mercy. Let God give us mercy. Just like the dreams had foreshadowed, it was 7 periods of time later, and then we pick it up in verse 34. It says, as after this time passed, Here we have Nebuchadnezzar, first person again, in a good way. I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven. My sanity returned, and I praised and worshiped the Most High and honored the one who lives forever. All of a sudden, the miraculous things that the Lord had done, that he had seen, it's turned personal for him in a good way, in a profound way. He had seen the Lord move when he tried to put Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael in the furnace, saw 4 in the fire. Now it's something different. He's gone through the fire. He's standing down. He's humbled himself at this point, and he's allowing God to give him his mercy. God will do that when we humble ourselves. When we finally humble ourselves, then God can give mercy. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. Grace is getting what you don't deserve. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. Mercy in Nebuchadnezzar's place is his mind was restored. As he started to worship the Lord in heaven, his mind was restored. And as he praised and honored the Lord, his mind is restored in his kingdom. He's put back in position. He's put back in position, but he's a changed man, I think, at this point. He's a changed man because this is no longer about Nebuchadnezzar. This is about what the Lord has done. When we stand down, we can let God give us mercy. But it can only happen if we look up. If we look up. Always remember to look up. I'm not sure what situations we're facing here today. I'm not sure what we're facing, but I want to encourage you, look up. I looked up, is what Nebuchadnezzar said. I looked up to heaven. And there's something about when we look up to heaven and look up to God, it's like all of a sudden our sanity, I'm not saying any of us have gone crazy at all, but it's like our sanity, our clarity comes back in a new way. And then I love how he just says, he praised and worshiped the Most High, and he honored him. First thing is his sanity, his clarity comes back as he praised and worshiped the Lord, and he honored him. He put him first, above everything else. So when he humbles himself and looks up and puts God first, God can give him mercy at that point. God can do what only he can do. Now, Nebuchadnezzar may not have known that the Lord was going to restore him to power, but his sanity returned. It's like a piece of, his life came back in a different way. But he declares again, it goes back to the theme of Daniel, his rule, God's rule is everlasting. His kingdom is eternal. He's declaring everything that he's been reminded of. He's being reminded, I was king, but my kingdom's temporary. It's temporary. Always look up. Always look up. If things are going well, look up. If things are challenging, look up. If you feel like you've been dragged through the mud, look up. If you feel like you've been on cloud 9, look up. Always look up. I'm reminded of what Peter says in 1 Peter 5:6, humble yourself under God's mighty power. And at the right time, he'll lift you up and honor you. Verse 7, give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. Humble yourself. Give it to him. Look up. Look up. When we stand down, we're able to let God give us mercy. And with that mercy, at times there can be restoration. Might not happen immediately as Nebuchadnezzar's story was here, but there can be a restoration. What feels like had been stolen from us, the Lord can bring back. He can bring back. He can do even greater things. James talks about humble yourselves before the Lord, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come close to God. See how that humility and drawing close to God tie in together? Come close to God. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts. Your loyalty is divided between God and the world. Let there be tears for what you have done. Let there be sorrow and deep grief. Let there be sadness instead of laughter and gloom instead of joy. Humble yourself before the Lord, and he will lift you up in honor. When we go before the Lord saying, Lord, Cleanse me. Do what you can. My pride has gotten in the way, which, by the way, pride is almost always the main sin that gets in the way in some fashion of our relationship with God. When we humble ourselves, stand down. God's given us, he gives us opportunities. God gives us opportunities. God will end up judging it. And if we can still stand down, and God can be merciful after that. One of the beautiful things, and I was mentioning it during ministry time, but the gospel helps keep us humble. Because when we as sinners come before the Lord, we do it because of what Jesus has done, not because of our own works. Ephesians 2:8, we know it. For by grace you have been saved. We've been saved through faith. This is not of yourselves. It's a gift of God, so that no man can boast. What a great reminder. We can only approach God with humility. We can only approach him with humility because of what he's done. Stand down. Stand down when God warns us and gives us opportunity. Stand down when he comes down with that judgment. Chapter 5 will show that judgment. It's quick, it's swift. It'll be a fun one here next week. And stand down, let God give you mercy. But always, in the midst of it, as you stand down, always remember to look back up to God. Amen. Here's 2 takeaways for today, and then we're going to go into one more song of worship here today. 2 takeaways. They're on your notes. What might be risking... Oh, that's last week's. Sorry, I didn't update that. They're on your paper. Is there an until you learn? They're on your paper. They're not on the slide. Sorry, Asher, my bad. Is there an until you learn standing in the way of drawing closer to God in your life? Is there an until you learn? Something, one area, an area where there's an until you learn that you need to let the Lord deal with. And then maybe this is similar, but in a different way. Is there an area where you just need to look up? God, here I am. I feel like it's been 7 periods of time. I have a hair like eagle's feathers and nails like bird's claws. I'm going to look up to you. Are there either of those for you here today?